Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I am no Kelly, but let me try my best at this. What's up, church? My name is Sam, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and I'm here to give you some announcements before the service starts. What's Up is spelled UUP, and that is an informal listening and talking session about church events. Now, we had a couple of these so far, and we called them listening groups or listening sessions, and it was so successful that we're going to continue to do these things. And so I was asked to share this with you. Up, it was with two U's, get it? Up. Is an informal listening and talking session about church events. The board hopes that congregation members and friends will participate in this monthly informal conversation time. And the next one we're going to do is January 26th after church. Our goal is to designate a monthly time during which all of us can get together, or many of us can get together, and share your concerns and ideas and suggestions about the operation of the church. And we're going to invite the committees. I don't know if you know this, but there are a number of committees that work hard for the church. So the committee members are going to be invited. The board members are going to be invited. So if you're looking for somebody to listen to what you have to say, this is the place to be. We even talk about the governance and activities and all that good stuff. We'll also share, I talked about that already. So here's what it says. So get a snack, get a beverage, come on by if you can. And as always, if you can't make it, please let any board member know if you have any questions, because the board members will actually represent the voice of people who can't make it for whatever reason. So there's that. I have here a notice from the Caring Committee. They say we are looking for congregation members experienced in eBay and or Facebook Marketplace to help Sandy Barbecue. Am I saying that? I think somebody's pranking me with this name. It's all right.
Right back here.
Sorry, don't hit me. We're trying to help reduce clutter and increase her financial stability. Please contact Mike. And I'm not going to try your name, Mike. I'm sorry. Mine's bad too, so I have no place to complain. Next note, please join Reverend Rod and Reverend Nancy for 4 sessions of the new UU class. By the way, I've been a UU for over 20 years, and I went to this class last time, and it was great. It's amazing the history of this place and the good that the UU has done. So the next new to UU is after service and coffee next Sunday. It's an opportunity to learn more about UU and the UU Church and of Las Cruces, and get to know others and others not so new members. And since the class starts Sunday, you need to tell Reverend Rod you want to attend.
That's me behind you.
All right. So they do need members. Now the regular announcements that are on the back of your program. So I don't want to take up too much time, so I'm going to try to jet through these. So please do take one of these sheets and take a look at this stuff, because it's a whole page. The MLK weekend at Las Cruces, organized by the Doña County branch of the NAACP, will feature 2 events. The first event is a rally in March, today at 2 p.m. in the downtown plaza. There'll be speakers and music, and a short walk to City Hall. Leave your torches and pitchforks at home. There's also an MLK Day breakfast on Monday, and that's at the LC Convention Center. Patrick Stewart will be the speaker on Mission Impossible. Tickets for breakfast are $50. I'm assuming some of that is a donation and can be purchased from Jan Thompson, who I believe is also sneaking around behind. There you are. There you are. Okay, good. Next one, Snowbirds. The Snowbirds Covenant group is starting up for the winter session, and they're looking for members. They meet every 2 weeks. I can't talk about Covenant groups because I don't have time, but it's awesome. The first meeting for those folks is Thursday, January the 30th at 2 o'clock in the church library. So if you're a snowbird, or so inclined, that's the place to be. A little bit about the Tombaugh Gallery. It's presenting the work of the internationally known artist Sam Peters, including 75 monotypes and mixed medium pieces produced by Mr. Peters between 1990 and 2020. And that's going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the hours are on here. And the last thing I have for you here is Social Justice Committee and select charities are okay. Social Justice Committee, I talked about, there are a lot of committees here. They're working to select who's going to get the Change for Change offerings. So they are eager to hear your opinions, and the person to talk to is Dave Rice, if I'm correct about that. All right, and they'll talk about Change for Change later, but those are the announcements. Again, my name is Sam, and thank you for coming today.
Well, Sam has had his chance. Now it's our turn to sing. So it's 153 if you have a hymnal, and the words will be on the screen. So I invite you to stand as you are willing and able and join us. Maestro. First thing I should remind you of is to put your phones or other electronic devices on worship mode. Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces. We welcome those of you who are here in the sanctuary, of course, and especially children and youth, and also those of you who are joining us on streaming technology. I'm Rod Thompson, your service associate for this morning. Haney and I swap places every once in a while. I'm also your minister, by the way. Our service leader is Haney Pearson. Rich Richens is at the piano, and also directing us and the choir this morning. We'll see the Director of Religious Education, Kelly Ingram, in a few minutes, assisting us up in the booth. I call it a booth, it's a table, but that's okay. Elwin on camera, Claire on audio, and Mike on everything else. Chalice table as usual, Diane and Jillian. Our greeters that you've already met, Diane doing double duty this week, Carol and Greg. Hospitality is by the Finance Committee. We're delighted that you're all here this morning. If you are visiting with us today, we'd like to meet you. If you're in the sanctuary, please wave to me so that I can bring you a microphone and you can introduce yourself with your name and where you're from. Are there any visitors here this morning?
Well, I'm not. I'm here all the time usually, but my daughter is here today. Her name is Holly Christensen, and she has been here for about 2 weeks, helping my husband and I. And she drove all the way from Cleveland, Tennessee. So I'm very joyful that she's here. So thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Carlos Gallo. I've been a resident of Las Cruces for some 28 years. But this week I met Dana at the airport in Chicago, and I came at her invitation.
Excellent. Welcome.
Good morning. My name's Kathy Gowan, and I am from Ruidoso. I'm from Ruidoso. Kind of echoing. It's echoing. I have hearing aids, and it's echoing for me. So it sounds like it's really fast, really loud. But I'm from Ruidoso, and I'm here visiting Sherry. And yesterday was my birthday, so we partied yesterday. But I've been to your church before, and I really enjoy it.
Do we have anybody online? No. Okay. Back in me. Thank you, visitors, and thank you, everybody else. We're pleased that all of you have joined us for our service today. If you have not done so, please fill out one of the visitors' cards so that we can keep you updated on what's going on around here. If you are new to our congregation, you may want to know that we're echoing Claire. You may want to know that Unitarian Universalism has no creed or dogma. We are a covenant-based church, meaning that we agree to live in relationship with each other according to the Unitarian Universalist values and our congregation's covenant of respectful relations. We embrace diversity in all its forms. Everyone is welcome. And of course, you can learn more about us online, uuchurchlc.org. And please join us after the service for coffee and conversation, as chilly as it is today, probably inside the RE Great Room, down the breezeway that way. Will you do the lighting honors?
Oh, yeah, I can fight it.
The lighters on that side today, I thought.
Okay.
Okay. Even though the candle's on this side. We light our chalice today to remember what some are intent on. There you go. I'm going to start that all over again. Well, there we go. Okay.
I can set fire to anything.
We light our chalice today to remember what some are intent on making us forget. To remember a man who fought to end segregation. To remember a man who marched to counter prejudice and oppression. To remember a man who was filled with peace and hope. To remember a man with promise and a dream. To remember a man with a voice that rang out for justice and freedom. So we have lighted our chalice to remember and to honor the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a life well lived in service to all of us.
We are not only celebrating the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King this morning, today we are also celebrating the many, many, many volunteers who helped make his dream appear approachable. It is not as if the man did everything alone. No, there were a lot of volunteers, and group singing helped pull them together. As a matter of fact, one of the student volunteers was Bernice Regan, who went on to found the group Sweet Honey in the Rock as Bernice Regan Johnson. These volunteers sang a lot of freedom songs, hymns, and borrowed We Shall Overcome from the 1940s labor movement. I saw a documentary last year on Curtis Mayfield, and most of you do not know who Curtis was. Writer, singer, producer, and so on. But he was one of the first socially conscious African American composers who turned out to be quite successful with it. We are not singing any of his songs. The only way that would work is if Kathy Cox, and I was going to say the Reverend Nancy, but another soprano got together and worked on them because Curtis sang that high. All right? I hope you enjoy the music and Reverend King's own words to remind us of the man. You want me to do this?
I can do it.
Okay. Fine.
I invite you to stand again to say our church's affirmation of covenant together, and then to sing the doxology in English and in Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation, thus to be covenant with one another. Let songs of hope
Good morning, church. Bear with me. This morning's story is just a little bit long, just a little. Sit in. How 4 friends stood up by sitting down, by Andrea Davis Pinckney. We must meet love with hate. These were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words that got them started. What did I say? You know, everybody's listening. I know everybody. Again. We must meet hate with love. Thank you. These were Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words that got them started. 4 hungry friends, eager to eat, each took a seat at the Woolworth's counter in North Carolina. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezel all sat quiet, with still hearts full of hope, and with Dr. King's words strong and close. They were college students with a plan. It was 1960. They didn't need menus. Their order was simple: a donut with coffee and cream on the side. And they waited, patiently, silently, without a fuss. They were the only black kids at the counter. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezel all sat while everyone else was served. At first, they were treated like the hole in the donut, invisible. Others tried to ignore them. The waitress watched and refused them. This was a sign of the times. Whites only. This was the law's recipe for segregation. Its instructions were easy to follow. Don't mix white people with black people. Now it was the 4 friends' turns to ignore and refuse. They ignored the law and refused to leave until they were served. Those kids had a recipe too, a brand new brew called integration. So David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezel sat quiet and still, with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's strong words close: be loving enough to absorb evil. They sat straight and proud and waited and wanted a donut and coffee with cream on the side. After sitting and waiting and wanting, a police officer came, but the 4 friends wouldn't leave. The police officer didn't know what to do. The students were doing nothing wrong. No crime in sitting, no harm in being quiet, no danger in looking hungry. The officer left the lunch counter without doing anything. So the Woolworths man turned off the lights and announced that they were closed. Customers left, including the 4 friends, who went home to dinner where they were served first. News had already spread about the sit-in. David, Joseph, Franklin, and Ezel all got their names in the paper. The next day, more students showed up at the lunch counter, still sitting for what was right, polite, determined, and in their best clothes. The young people knew the menu by heart. They ordered. No food came. So they sat in silence and waited and wanted a donut with coffee and cream on the side. To pass the time, the students read their school books. They wrote in their journals. They finished their schoolwork. They didn't need to read the menu, so they studied for tomorrow's test. What had started in North Carolina had spread like a grease fire. There were lunch counter protests in Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Atlanta. If lunch counters could go from whites only to all welcome, If segregation could turn to integration, if black people and white people could break bread together, then they would all pass the test. Everybody would score an A+ with coffee and cream on the side. Sadly, many folks were not ready to make that grade. As the sit-ins grew, so did people's anger. The students were served a dose of hatred, with coffees poured down their backs, milkshakes in their faces. The students wanted to lash out but couldn't. Practicing peace while others showed hatred was harder than any school test. So they sat in silence with hearts full of hope, with Dr. King's dream true and close. We must meet violence with nonviolence. Soon the sit-ins grew bigger and wider. White students joined their black friends in protest. Even though the students were committed to peace, the police officers now took action. They arrested them, took them to jail. Still, the students didn't resist and they didn't fight. They held Dr. King's words steady and close. Demonstrate calm dignity. Soon folks were so busy arguing about who was wrong and who was right that they all stopped going to Woolsworth and other lunch counters altogether. Some businesses were forced to integrate just to keep their businesses alive, but the struggle was far from over. When President Kennedy got a taste of integration, he didn't sit in, he stepped in. He went on TV and urged Americans to treat each other fairly, with love and dignity. He told Congress to take action against segregation, welcomed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. After weeks of sitting, after months of being still, after years of praying, hunger for equality, the students finally got what they ordered, and it was worth the wait. Those courageous young people came back to Woolworths for seconds and thirds. A donut with cream and coffee on the side. It's not about food. It's about pride. Those were the words that filled them up. Thank you, Dr. King. The end.
I think we'll join those kids and sing again. This one is number 140 in your hymnals, the gray hymnals. Hail the glorious golden city. And we'll just stay seated for this one, I think. One of the ways we support one another in community is through the sharing of joys, sorrows, and milestones. In these challenging times, it's crucial that we make attempts to stay connected with one another. If you have a joy, sorrow, milestone that you would like to share with the congregation this morning, if you'll raise a hand, I'll bring the microphone to you. You can share your name and what's on your heart. I have a sorrow this morning that I would share. Yesterday, Jerry Natchison died. After, Jody said, after really the last 60 days, he just kept going down and ended up in hospice. No arrangements have been made at this time. Are there other joys, sorrows, milestones to share this morning?
I have an amendment to Kelly's story this morning. I was living in Greensboro, North Carolina, when that sit-in happened. My husband was a new professor at a Quaker college there, Guilford College. And when we woke up one morning, we read the paper that many of his colleagues had been arrested for sitting in. The professors at this Quaker school were sitting in with the black people, and they were arrested for doing this. And we felt very, very proud to be part of that institution.
My name is Janet Martinique, and I have a joy and a sorrow. The sorrow first. I fell Wednesday night and smashed my face in and my legs, and I've got sores all over my body, and all my muscles are sore. The joy is I didn't break anything.
I'm Jennifer Trantham. Last week I shared that my youngest son and his partner gave birth to my first grandson, but my fourth grandchild. My joy today is about my other son, Joshua Pritchard, who usually sings in a choir, but he's currently performing right now in the Jesus Christ Superstar. And he seems to, I knew he had this passion, but it's really neat as a parent to watch your kid find their way to something that you know is really there in their heart. So I'm super proud of him. They are performing next weekend again for several performances if anybody wants to go see them. It's at the Rio Grande Theater.
My name is Lindsay. I have a joy/milestone. I finally am employed. Yay! I finally got a job at the food bank where I've been volunteering off and on for years. And a quick sorrow, my stepmother is now in hospice due to blood clots, I learned yesterday.
Yep, I'm coming. I'm not running.
My name is Karuna Warren, a.k.a. Richard Warren. I grew up in Chicago, and when Dr. Martin Luther King died in 1968, I didn't have a beard, and every time I would go places, they would think that I was Dr. Martin Luther King. I would actually get on a bus, and people would start looking at me, and really it scared me, so that's when I started growing up. And I'd just like to make one quote from Dr. King. Sooner or later, all of the people of the world will have to find a way to live together in peace, and thereby transcend this pending cosmic energy of humanity as brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you. All of us volunteers for Mesilla Valley Hospice and La Posada received an email just the other day that Gene Wergler, who had been a resident there for a number of years, passed away. Gene joined this church in 1973. We didn't get here until 2004, and she had been living in that place, ever since I started volunteering there. I'm going to miss Jean. She was one of a kind. Now the update about my wife. Okay, I don't know how much people know, but essentially Lynn had a brain lift, all right? Brain wanted to come out through her ears, but because of a bone, essentially, it went. So they took part of the skull, used that as a support, and she's got titanium mesh in her head, okay? Her head was hard enough as it was, okay? But, she's doing well. She has some balance issues. The inner ear on the left side is not fully functioning yet, but she is no longer deaf in that ear. So she can hear everything I say. January 30th, we go up to see the neurosurgeon, and February 6th, we go up to see the ENT surgeon. They were double teaming her. And in between, we'll try to celebrate our 51st wedding anniversary.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Schultz, and I don't know how many. I'm so glad to see all of you here this morning, all of my dear friends. And I just was reminded every Martin Luther King Day that I saw him in Detroit on June 1963 when he was beta testing his I Have a Dream speech. I heard it from the nosebleed section of Cobo Arena. My brother and my best friend drove down to watch the march down Woodward Avenue with the UAW leaders and linked arm in arm down the street, Woodward. And they came home and told me about it, so I drove down and heard MLK beta testing his I Have a Dream speech. I don't remember very much about the speech, but I filled in all the blanks since I've heard it so many times as it was done in Washington.
My name is Rabbit Loring. I have a milestone and a joy that goes along with it. My oldest child, my son-in-law Craig, is turning 60 tomorrow. And the joy that goes along with it is that my daughter from California and my son from Texas have come to celebrate with us. So we have family here. So very happy about that.
Do we have any streaming? Okay, thank you. I can manipulate. I am adding a candle to carry those joys, sorrows, milestones, perhaps held too closely to share this morning. We all hold hopes and dreams, wounds and worries. Remembering this, let us treat one another with patience and with love.
On March 25th, 1965, Dr. King delivered a sermon in Montgomery, Alabama that has become known as the "Our God is Marching On" speech. The following are excerpts from that sermon. Last Sunday, more than 8,000 of us started on a mighty walk from Selma, Alabama. We have walked through desolate valleys and across the trying hills. We have walked on meandering highways and rested our bodies on rocky byways. Some of our faces are burned from the outpourings of the sweltering sun. Some have literally slept in the mud. We have been drenched by the rains. Our bodies are tired and our feet are somewhat sore. But today, as I stand before you and think back over the Great March, I can say, as Sister Pollard said, a 70-year-old Negro woman who lived in this community during the bus boycott. And one day she was asked while walking if she didn't want to ride. And when she answered no, the person said, "Well, aren't you tired?" And with her ungrammatical profundity, she said, "My feet is tired, but my soul is rested." And in a real sense this afternoon, we can say that our feet are tired, but our souls are rested. They told us we wouldn't get here, and there were those who said that we would get here only over their dead bodies. But all the world today knows that we are here, and we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying, we ain't going to let nobody turn us around. Yet strangely, the climatic conflicts always were fought and won on Alabama soil. After Montgomery's heroic confrontations loomed up in Mississippi, Arkansas, Georgia, and elsewhere, but not until the colossus of segregation was challenged in Birmingham did the conscience of America begin to bleed. White America was profoundly aroused by Birmingham because it witnessed the whole community of Negroes facing terror and brutality with majestic scorn and heroic courage. And from the wells of this democratic spirit, the nation finally forced Congress to write legislation in the hope that it would eradicate the stain of Birmingham. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 gave Negroes some part of their rightful dignity, but without the right to vote, it was dignity without strength. Once more, the method of nonviolent resistance was unsheathed from its scabbard, and once again an entire community was mobilized to confront the adversary. And again, the brutality of a dying order shrieks across the land. Yet Selma, Alabama became a shining moment in the conscience of man. If the worst in American life lurked in its dark streets, the best of American instincts arose passionately from across the nation to overcome it. There never was a moment in American history more honorable and more inspiring than the pilgrimage of clergymen and laymen of every race and faith pouring into Selma to face danger at the side of its embattled Negroes. The confrontation of good and evil compressed in the tiny community of Selma generated the massive power to turn the whole nation to a new course. A president born in the South had the sensitivity to feel the will of the country and in an address that will live in history as one of the most passionate pleas for human rights ever made by a president of our nation. He pledged the might of the federal government to cast off the centuries-old blight. President Johnson rightly praised the courage of the Negro for awakening the conscience of the nation. On our part, we must pay our profound respects to the white Americans who cherish their democratic traditions over the ugly customs and privileges of generations and come forth boldly to join with us. From Montgomery to Birmingham, from Birmingham to Selma, from Selma back to Montgomery, a trail wound in a circle long and often bloody, yet it has become a highway up from darkness. Alabama has tried to nurture and defend evil, but evil is choking to death in the dusty roads and streets of this state. So I stand before you this afternoon with the conviction that segregation is on its deathbed in Alabama. And the only thing uncertain about it is how costly the segregationalists and Wallace will make the funeral. Racial segregation as a way of life did not come about as a natural result of hatred between the races immediately after the Civil War. Excuse me. There were no laws segregating the races then, and the noted historian C. Van Woodward, in his book, The Strange Career of Jim Crow, clearly points out the segregation of the races was really a political stratagem employed by the emerging bourbon interest in the South to keep the Southern masses divided and Southern labor the cheapest in the land. You see, it was a simple thing to keep the poor white masses working for near starvation wages in the years that followed the Civil War. Why? If the poor white plantation or mill worker became dissatisfied with his low wages, the plantation or mill owner would merely threaten to fire him and hire former Negro slaves and pay him even less. Then the Southern wage level was kept almost unbearably low. Toward the end of the Reconstruction era, something very significant happened. That is what was known as the populist movement, awakening the poor white masses and the former Negro slaves to the fact that they were fleeced by the emerging bourbon interest, uniting the Negro and white masses into a voting bloc that threatened to drive the bourbon interest from the command post of political power in the South. To meet this threat, the Southern aristocracy began immediately to engineer the development of a segregated society. Getting hot in here. I want you to follow me through here because this is a very important to see. Thank you. The roots of racism and the denial of the right to vote. Through their control of mass media, they revised the doctrine of white supremacy that crippled and eventually destroyed the populist movement of the 19th century. If it may be said, I don't know why I'm getting dizzy. If it may be said of the slavery era that the white man took the world and gave the Negro him.
Want me to read?
Yeah.
you guys. If it may be said of the slavery era that the white man took the world and gave the Negro Jesus, then it may be said that the Reconstruction era, that the Southern aristocracy took the world and gave the poor white man Jim Crow. He gave him Jim Crow. And when his wrinkled stomach cried out for the food that his empty pockets could not provide it, he ate Jim Crow. Okay, right. All right. Thus, the threat of the free exercise of the ballot by the Negro and the white masses alike resulted in the establishment of a segregated society. They segregated Southern money from the poor whites. They segregated Southern mores from the rich whites. They segregated Southern churches from Christianity. They segregated Southern minds from honest thinking, and they segregated the Negro from everything. That's what happened when the Negro and the white masses of the South threatened to unite and build a great society, the society of justice, where none would prey upon the weakness of others, a society of plenty where greed and poverty would be done away, a society of brotherhood where every man would respect the dignity and worth of human personality. We've come a long way since the travesty of justice was perpetuated upon the American mind. James Weldon Johnson put it eloquently. He said, "We have come over a way that with tears hath been watered. We have come treading our paths through the blood of the slaughtered, out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast." Today I want to tell the city of Selma, today I want to say to the state of Alabama, today I want to say to the people of America, that the nations of the world, that we are not about to turn around. We are on the move now. We okay? Yeah. Okay. I think you guys better sing for us.
Somebody's
Thing is, the same thing happened the last time Rod and I worked together, only it was reverse. Only he was the one. Okay. Okay, y'all. The following reading is taken from a sermon delivered at Ebenezer Baptist Church, Atlanta, Georgia, on June 5th, 1966. I would like to preach from the subject, Guidelines for a Constructive Church. Over the last several weeks now, we have been reading a good deal in our newspapers about guidelines. Now, this word has been applied basically to the public school systems across our nation, particularly in the South. The Supreme Court of our nation rendered a decision back in 1954 declaring segregation in public schools unconstitutional. And that the next year in 1955, it came back stating that every school district was to integrate with all deliberate speed. And yet we came into 1966 with the terrible realization that only 5.2% of the Negro students of the South had been placed in integrated schools, which meant in substance that we haven't made 1% progress in a year. And if continued at that pace, it would take another 96 years to integrate the public schools in the South. And so, the Department of Education decided that the process had to be speeded up on the basis of the Civil Rights Bill of 1964. And this department decided to set forth basic guidelines that had to be followed. The guidelines stated in substance that the process of integration had to be speeded up. That all grades had to be integrated, that even faculties had to be integrated. And this plan or these guidelines was submitted to every school district. And that school district had to decide whether it would follow the guidelines. If it refused to follow the guidelines, then federal funds would be cut off. If it complied with the guidelines, then federal funds would be continued. And so today, there is a great discussion all over the educational world and the public school about whether a school district or a school board will follow the guidelines. Come on.
My turn?
Yeah.
I'm good. Okay, here we go. This morning, I would like to submit to you that we who are followers of Jesus Christ And we who must keep his church going and keep it alive also have certain basic guidelines to follow. Somewhere behind the dim mist of eternity, God set forth his guidelines. And though his prophets, and above all through his Son Jesus Christ, he said that there are some things that my church must do. There are some guidelines that my church must follow. And if we in the church don't want the funds of grace cut off from the divine treasury, we've got to follow the guidelines. The guidelines are clearly set forth for us in some words uttered by our Lord and Master as he went in the temple one day. And he went back to Isaiah and quoted from him. And he said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath appointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering the sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." These are the guidelines. You see, the church is not a social club, although some people think it is. They get caught up in their exclusivism, and they feel that it is a kind of social club with a thin veneer of religiosity. But the church is not a social club. The church is not an entertainment center, although some people think it is. You can tell in many churches how they act in church, which demonstrates that they think it's an entertainment center. The church is not an entertainment center. Monkeys are to entertain, not preachers. But in the final analysis, the church has a purpose. The church is dealing with man's ultimate concern, and therefore it has certain guidelines that it must follow. Now, I wish time permitted for me to go into every aspect of this text, but I want to just mention a few. Let us first think of the fact that if the church is following its guidelines, it seeks to heal the brokenhearted. Now, there is probably no human condition more tantalizing than a broken heart. You see, brokenheartedness is not a physical condition. It's a condition of spiritual exhaustion. And who here this morning has not experienced a broken heart? I would say brokenheartedness comes basically from the type of experience of disappointment. And I don't believe there are any people here this morning under the sound of my voice who has not been disappointed about something. Here is a young man or a young woman dreaming of some great career and setting out in school to try to make that career possible, only to discover that they don't quite have the mental faculties, the technical know-how to achieve excellence in a particular field. And so they end up having to choose life's second best. And because of this, they end up with a broken heart. Here's a couple standing before the altar in a marriage that seems to be born in heaven, only to discover that 6 months or a year later, the conflicts and the dissensions begin to develop, arguments and misunderstandings begin to unfold, and that some marriage, which a year earlier seemed to have been born in heaven, ends up in the divorce court, and the individuals are left with a broken heart. Here is a family, mother and father, striving desperately to train their children up in the way that they should be, working hard to make their education possible, working hard to give them a sense of direction, praying fervently for their guidance. And yet, in spite of all of this, one or two of the children end up taking the wrong road, moving toward some strange and tragic far country. And the parents end up having to acknowledge that the children that they raised are prodigals lost in a far country, and they end up with a broken heart. And then there comes life's ultimate tragedy, that something that always makes for a broken heart. Who this morning hasn't experienced it? When you must stand before the bier of a loved one, the day when the casket rolls down the aisle, that experience called death, which is the irreducible common denominator of all men. And no one can lose a loved one. No one can lose a mother or father, sister, brother, a child without ending up with a broken heart. Brokenheartedness is a reality in life. And Sunday after Sunday, week after week, people come to God's church with broken hearts. They need a word of hope, and the church has an answer. If it doesn't, it isn't a church. The church must say in substance that brokenheartedness is a fact of life. Don't try to escape when you come to that experience. Don't try to repress it. Don't end up in cynicism. Don't get mean when you come to that experience. The church must say to men and women that Good Friday is a fact of life. The church must say to people that failure is a fact of life. Some people are only conditioned to success. They are only conditioned to fulfillment. Then, when the trials and the burdens of life unfold, they can't stand up with it. But the church must tell men that Good Fridays, as much as the fact of life of Easter, failure is as much a fact of life as success. Disappointments is as much a fact as fulfillment. And the church must tell men to take your burden, take your grief, and look at it. Don't run from it. Say that this is my grief and I must bear it. Look at it hard enough and say, how can I transform this liability into an asset? From Dr. King's words to mine. The operation and outreach of this church needs your input. and also your contributions. This is the perfect time to think about what you can give back. In a moment, the greeters will pass among you with the offering baskets. But before they do that, I should remind you that we support organizations identified by the Social Justice Committee with our Change for Change program. This quarter's recipient for our Change for Change donations is the Dharma Horse Equine Sanctuary, which provides lifelong loving care for horses, mules, and donkeys that have been abused, neglected, or abused. You can give to them by putting your change in the basket or by writing Change for Change on the note line of your check. Please give.
For my closing words, I shall return to the good Reverend Doctor. During a trip to Michigan, he delivered a sermon at Detroit's Second Baptist Church on February 28, 1954, on rediscovering lost values. The following is an excerpt. I want you to think with me this morning from the subject, rediscovering lost values. Rediscovering lost values. There is something wrong with our world, something fundamentally, basically wrong. I don't think we have to look too far to see that. I'm sure that most of you would agree with me in making that assertion. And when we stop to analyze the cause of our world's ills, many things come to mind. We begin to wonder if it's due to the fact that our scientific genius lags behind. That is, if we have not made enough progress scientifically. Well, then that can't be. For our scientific progress over the past years has been amazing. Man, through his scientific genius, has been able to warp distance and places, time in chains. So that today it's possible to eat breakfast in New York City and supper in London, England. Back in about 1753, it took a letter 3 days to go from New York City to Washington, D.C. And today, you can go from here to China in less time than that. It can't be because man is stagnant in his scientific progress. Man's scientific genius has been amazing. I think we have to look much deeper than that if we are to find the real cause of man's problems and the real cause of the world's ills today. If we are able to really find it, I think we will have to look in the hearts and souls of men. The trouble isn't so much that we don't know enough, is that we aren't good enough. The trouble isn't so much that our scientific genius lags behind, but our moral genius lags behind. The great problem facing modern man is that the means by which we live have outdistanced the spiritual ends for which we live. So we find ourselves caught in a messed up world. The problem is with man himself and man's soul. We haven't learned how to be just and honest and kind and true and loving. And that is the basis of our problem. The real problem is that through our scientific genius, we have made the world a neighborhood. But through our moral and spiritual genius, we have failed to make it a brotherhood. And the great danger facing us today is not so much the atomic bomb that was created by physical science, but the real danger confronting civilization today is that atomic bomb which lies in the hearts and souls of men, capable of exploding into the vilest hate and into the most damaging selfishness. That's the atomic bomb that we have got to fear today. Problem is with men, within the heart and souls of man. That is the real basis of our problem.
Amen. I think we get to sing again.
Number 1018.
1018.
Okay, come and go with me. Please rise. Yes.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me
say the words by which we extinguish the flames. The words are on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Whatever you want.
Well, but they're going to put the
I think you know the songs that we were going to sing, but we're going to just end with the one that would be the third of the medley, and we invite you to sing with us.
Yeah.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. And it goes like this. We're not afraid.
We are not